So, how are you feeling? How would you, if you could only use one word, how would you describe just right now your emotional state? One word. What would that word be? Well, let's have just maybe a bit more fun. Instead of one word, what if I would say to you, choose one emoji? How are you feeling? I mean, doesn't that feel a bit more fun than just trying to mine up one word? So really, if you could select one emoji that depicts how you're feeling right now, what would that emoji be? Well, would it be this emoji? I mean, you just feel completely exasperated. I mean, with everything and anything. I mean, you just find yourself waking up in the morning, feeling like this. You feel like as you make your way through the day, you feel like this. I mean, when you go to bed at night, you're still just, you have that, exasperated feeling. Would this be your emoji? You just feel uneasy with everything. I mean, uneasy with relationships, uneasy with your job. You feel uneasy with, your retirement and your investments. You feel uneasy with your business. You feel uneasy with your family. You feel uneasy with, you just feel uneasy getting in your car and driving to the store. I mean, just everything has you kind of on edge. Maybe for you, the emoji is, you're just mad. Maybe you know what you're mad about. Maybe you have no idea what you're mad about, but you're on this constant state of just, anger. And it's intense. And you don't really like it. And you look in the mirror and you don't like what you see, but it's there. Or maybe for you, you're just sad. That's the emoji. What's interesting is so many times when we use the word grief, we attach it to, the death of a loved one, and that definitely is grief. But actually, grief holistically it's loss. And we've all gone through a really long season filled with loss. I mean, some really big losses, but there's been a whole list of really small losses. Like I think about just the entire 2020 holiday season, from Halloween into Thanksgiving into Christmas. And for my wife, Kim, and I, we have a whole list of traditions. And when we moved to Pennsylvania over 4 years ago, we were able to start some new traditions. And some of those were just some really cool fall festivals that, we found and other people told us about. And we put it on our calendar. And, we have just looked forward to those fall festivals. And I just remember this last fall where those calendar dates would come and, those events, those festivals had been canceled. And I know in the scope of life and what's going on in the world, those aren't like important events. But guess what? They still made me sad when we had to delete them from our calendar where Kim and I couldn't go and experience those moments together. Do you just feel sad because, there's just been a lot of loss over this season? Maybe for you, the emoji is this face. Now, what's interesting about this face is Apple named this face the persevering emoji. And I love that word because when I looked it up, because I was just more curious about what that emotion, I kind of had an idea of what that emotion really was reflecting. But when I looked it up and realized that the word was persevering, now that made so much, more sense to me, because I do think that is the emotion, that's the feeling. It's that of hands clenched, eyes closed, teeth gritting together, and you're like, no matter what comes my way, I'm going to make my way through. No matter what I face, nothing's going to conquer me. I'm just going to keep my head down and keep moving forward. And maybe that's what you're feeling right now. Or maybe for you, you've just tried to block out all feelings and you've just tried to say, you know what, I'm too overwhelmed by all of those feelings, and you're just trying not to feel anymore. Every year, some organization comes together and they will put together new emojis that they release. It's a worldwide thing. And in November of 2020, one of those new emojis that was released is what they called the disguised face. And I think it's so telling, especially for that to be released in November of 2020, because I do think, well, most of us, when it comes to our emotions, when it comes to our feelings, not just that we don't want to talk about them or face them, we definitely don't want other people to really know what we're feeling inside. In fact, most of us are experts at disguising our feelings. So how are you feeling? Really? As a teenager, I read through the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I remember when I heard about those movies those books being made into movies, and I was so excited because, again, as a teenager, I read all of the Lord of the Rings books, and I imagined what it could look like. And, well, on opening night of all of those movies, when they opened, I was there in the theater. Well, there's this interaction between Bilbo Baggins and Gandalf. Gandalf had come to Bilbo's house, and they were in a pretty intense conversation. And what Bilbo said to Gandalf was really reflective to, well, how I'm doing, really. You see, what Bilbo said to Gandalf was, well, I feel thin, sort of stretched like butter scraped over too much bread. Now, I don't know what emoji depicts that. But that line, I feel thin, kind of stretched. I mean, that's how I'm doing emotionally. That's how I'm feeling, really. You see, what we have to understand in all of us, our emotions, our feelings are the real. The question is, what are we going to do about them? And how are our emotions and feelings going to, guide or not guide the direction of our life? Well, I'm going to ask you a kind of uncomfortable question. But before I pose this uncomfortable question, let me just let you all know so that you can just kind of rest in the fact that we all are going to answer the question the same way. You know, whether I know you or I don't know you, whether this is your first time with us or you've been with us for years, I'm just going to let you know, I know how you're going to answer. And you're going to answer my uncomfortable question with yes. So, you ready for the question? Here it is. Have you ever made an emotionally reactionary decision that you later regretted? And the answer to that is yes, you have. I mean, have you ever, purchased a car and you wanted to buy a new car, but you weren't sure if you're going to buy a new car, and then you saw that car and it was a color you've dreamt of, and you went there and, they let you sit in it and they let you turn it on. They let you take it for a test drive, and you just pictured yourself driving off the car lot in that car. I mean, you knew that it was going to stretch your budget. You knew that you had some other debt to pay off. You knew that maybe it wasn't the best financial decision, but it's your dream car. And so you purchased that dream car, and then all of a sudden, days, weeks, months later, the emotional feeling around that car quickly changed. Have you ever quit a job? And in the moment when you quit, it felt great until you woke up the next day, the next week, until you got some space and realized that just maybe, you made a emotionally reactionary decision. Have you ever broke up with someone or got married to someone and you just knew, but feelings are powerful, and you made an emotionally reactionary decision? I can keep going on with illustrations, but here's the thing I know. Here's the thing you know. We all have. I have. I have made emotionally reactionary decisions that all of a sudden as some of those feelings connected with that decision died, other feelings started to emerge. And I started to say, well, Chris, why did you? You knew better. Other people were speaking into your life. And why did you? Well, because feelings are, really powerful emotions within all of us that guide our decisions. And, healthy decisions help, or healthy feelings help guide our healthy decisions. And unhealthy feelings help, if we're not careful, guide unhealthy decisions. Work with me on an illustration. Maybe this illustration will fit a context within your life, or maybe it won't. But I think this illustration, you're going to find, a connecting point of how powerful emotions really are. Have you ever felt just disconnected from God? And maybe this is a season where you feel disconnected from God. Maybe this is a season where you know God is there, but he doesn't feel like he's there. And being disconnected or feeling disconnected from God, it's a pretty powerful feeling. Well, let's take this thought process one step further. Have you ever walked into a church? People were standing at the door and, you just didn't connect with them. I mean, they were there, but as you walked past them, you thought to yourself, I don't know if this is really a friendly church. Have you ever walked up to get that free cup of coffee and, the people behind helping serve, you just didn't really feel connected with? Maybe they said hi to you, but you just didn't feel connected to them. And you got that cup of coffee and you took a drink and, it wasn't as hot as you would like. It wasn't as strong as you would like. I mean, you're thankful for it, but again, it didn't make a connection. You walk into the sanctuary, the auditorium, the room, and you find your seat in the song started and people were singing, but you weren't singing and you just felt disconnected. Maybe you didn't know the songs. Maybe you didn't like the song. Maybe, who knows why? You just didn't feel connected. Finally, the preacher got up to preach, to give the message, to give the talk. And, he was talking, but you didn't feel connected to him. You didn't feel connected with what he was saying, what the Bible was saying. I mean, you just kind of thought to yourself, this isn't for me, and this isn't helpful for me. And, the service got to the end, and you get up and you walk out, and, you just feel disconnected. And then you started just feeling, God, are you really there? And you started to feel kind of distance from church, and before long, you just stopped going. And there's a whole list of people that you're blaming. You blame the people at the door, and you blame the people serving coffee, and you blame the people picking out the songs, you blame the pastor, you blame the people that walked down your road, didn't say anything to you. There's a whole list of people that you're focused on, but in all reality, you walked away from church, you walked away from God. But what if a reverse time on this story? What if right before you walked into that church building that day feeling disconnected? What if that morning you woke up and you were getting ready for church and you got in an argument with someone and you were just mad? Maybe it was a spouse, maybe it was you got a call from work, maybe it was one of your kids, maybe it was a best friend, who knows? Maybe you saw something on Facebook that someone posted some passive-aggressive comment. It doesn't matter what it was. It's just you woke up that morning to go to church, and the entire morning getting ready and driving to church, you were just mad. You were just angry. And in fact, not only were you just mad that morning, that entire week, that entire month, maybe that entire year, you were just living in a constant state of agitation. I mean, just your entire life, just everything was just kind of off kilter. Everything has just been in the season, just kind of, it's hard to put some words to it. It's not like life was bad for you, but you were in a constant state of Well, agitation. And in fact, not only were you in a constant state of agitation, when it comes to just where you find yourself in life, you were just feeling unfulfilled. Maybe that was unfulfilled with your job. Maybe it was unfulfilled with your business. Maybe it was unfulfilled in a relationship, a dating relationship, a marriage. Maybe it was feeling unfulfilled as a mother or father. Maybe it was feeling unfulfilled with your dreams. I mean, whatever was tethered to feeling unfulfilled, it was at an all-time high. And actually feeling unfulfilled would cause some of that agitation to happen within you. And you see what intensified the feeling unfulfilled was the fact that you just feel really insecure. And maybe that insecurity gets tethered all the way back to childhood, when a mom or a dad looked at you and said that you would never amount to anything. When a mom or dad looked at you and said that you couldn't accomplish your dreams. Maybe for you, you've been trying to live up to an expectation that your mom or dad set for you. Or maybe they never set for you, but you set it for them. And now all of that insecurity is getting funneled into, you feeling unfulfilled. That's getting funneled into you feeling agitated. That gets funneled into, an argument that morning that maybe you don't even remember what you're arguing about. And it had nothing to do with what you were arguing about anyway. It had everything to do with everything else building up that led into you walking into a church and feeling disconnected from everyone around you, including feeling disconnected from God. See, what you have to realize is you follow you everywhere you go. You see, what you have to realize is just because you feel it doesn't mean you should act on it. And so many times we make decisions based off of our feelings. And those feelings are unhealthy. Those feelings are complicated. Those feelings are layered. You see, over and over again, we have said that this isn't a self-help series. Why? Because the end point in self-help is self, you. But in fact, this entire series, Jumpstart, is all about loving God and loving people with all of ourselves. And over and over again, we say that love is more than words, that love is action. And what complicates that phrase, love is action, is that actions are influenced by our feelings. They just are. So in the time we have remaining, I want to share a story that reveals a truth that you have to hold on to no matter what you are feeling. And then a tool to help you navigate through your emotions, your feelings. Luke, I love the story of Luke because Luke was this guy that came to investigate everything about Jesus. And he interviewed eyewitness after eyewitness after eyewitness to go, I want to know who this Jesus person is. And if I'm going to believe in him, trust in him, I want to talk to everyone I can. And that's what Luke did. And he wrote the story of Jesus, the Gospel of Luke. And in Luke chapter 7, there's this quick little story that I think, I hope will encourage you. Luke tells us that soon afterwards, and Jesus had just taught one of his longest teachings that we have recorded in the Bible. And there's large crowds following Jesus. They were leaning into Jesus. Jesus had just hand-selected his 12 disciples, his 12 leaders, and they were just getting to know Jesus themselves. And soon afterwards, Jesus went to a town called Nain. And what's important here is, it's a town that maybe you've never heard of before because it's a small little town. It's an overlooked town. It's a town way off the beaten path. But Jesus on that day he had a purpose. And so he, leading his disciples and this large crowd, they head off to this, insignificant town called Nain. And when he got there, Luke tells us, he approached the town gate and a large crowd was coming out of that small little town. So Jesus had his large crowd. The disciples were with Jesus. They were all coming into this area, and the small village of Nain was right in front of them. And out of that town comes, well, probably every single person from that town. And they were all walking out. And then Luke very specifically gives us what was happening. He tells us that a dead person was being carried out. I mean, funerals are difficult, and being a pastor, I've been to countless funerals. I've officiated countless funerals. I've walked with families through, well, countless funerals. And here's what I know. I mean, all funerals are difficult because you're grieving the loss of a loved one. But there's some funerals that are just a bit easier. Someone who's lived a great life, a long life, someone who's loved deeply and who's been loved deeply, someone who, well, got to a place in life when they were ready to go. Those funerals just feel a bit different. But there's been other funerals that were some of the most difficult moments I've ever walked with people through. And you see, this large crowd leaving this village called Nain was a funeral procession. And Luke tells us that, well, someone had died, and well, it wasn't like any ordinary funeral. It was the only son of this lady, this mom, the only son. It was a child's funeral. You know, like I just said, you know, all funerals are difficult, but the intensity of all funerals aren't the same. You see, we're not sure the age of this child, but here's what I know. It doesn't matter the age of a child. A parent should never bury a child. A parent never should have to attend their child's funeral, no matter the age of the child. And not only was this woman having to bury her only son, Luke tells us that she was a widow. She was a widow. And I think about these three tragic events that this woman was experiencing. And I paused and I started thinking through, well, what emotions would be tied to here? And maybe you come up with your own emotions, but these are the three top emotions I think this woman was facing. When it came to her child's death, I just think the feeling was it's just unfair. Why? Because a mother should never have to bury her child. A mother should never have to bury her son. A father should never have to bury their child. It's not the order of life. It's not how life should work. And I just think for this mother, it was just completely unfair that she was having to lead out the funeral procession for her son. I think about her being a widow, and I just wrote the emotion just lonely, because I think about my marriage with my wife Kim, and I've told her this: if anything ever would happen to her, I would just never get married again. Why? Because she is my friend, she is my companion, she's the one that gets me, she's the one that puts up with me. Like, she's that person, and there's just no one else that could ever fill that gap. And here's what I would know, and it would be tragic, but that loneliness, like, you can't just fill that loneliness gap. And for this mother, like, she lost her husband. And then I think about it being her only son. Remember, 2,000 years ago, it was the male that provided security. It was the male that provided income and work for the family. And I just think the emotion was uncertainty, because this woman had lost her husband, but her son was able to provide that security. Her son was able to provide the income and the stability for the family. And now, she has none of that. And I think her financial future was completely uncertain. I think her livelihood was filled with uncertainty. And then what Jesus does next was so amazing. Luke tells us that when the Lord Jesus saw her, I mean, the crowds of people, crowds around Jesus, crowds coming out of the city, but Jesus locked eyes on her. Out of everyone around him, it was her that he locked into. When he saw her, Luke writes that well, his heart went out to her. His heart had compassion for her. I think as Luke was writing this story, he was trying to get the right word that expressed what other people was sharing with him that were there, who witnessed this. And Luke found this Greek word that was the strongest Greek word he could possibly find to express how Jesus felt for this woman. It's this word that means that with all of Jesus's insides, with all of his bowels, with his entire self, he felt he had compassion for her. It wasn't just he felt sorry for the situation. No. Everything within him ached for her. And he walked up to her and he spoke to her. Now, what he said was, don't cry. And it wasn't like one of those like, man up. Get over it. No. Because when Jesus spoke to her and said, don't cry, Jesus knew what was coming next. But he spoke to her. And I think just the tone of his voice put her at ease. And then he walked up to the stretcher that had the body laying on it, and he touched it. And in this moment, Jesus was considered a rabbi, and he broke religious rules, religious law. He became ceremonially unclean because he touched it, but Jesus didn't care because he cared about this woman and this boy. And when he touched, the boy came back to life. He healed him and healed this mother. You see, I think about that moment. And then I think this is what I want you to hold on to. Even if you don't feel it, I want you to know that Jesus sees you. Sees you. In the midst of the crowd, Jesus is locking eyes on you. And I want you to hold on to the truth that Jesus, his heart goes out to you. Jesus has compassion for you. His entire being feels, he knows what you're facing. He knows what you're going through. He knows what you're navigating. He knows right now what emoji you pick. That Jesus, with his entire being, has compassion. His heart goes out to you. And I want you to know that Jesus is speaking to you, and Jesus wants to bring healing into your life. And maybe not the healing that you expect him to do. I promise you, on that day, that mother did not expect for her son to be healed. She didn't expect that at all. So just maybe, Jesus' healing in your life looks different than you expect. But just know, Jesus desires to heal you. Whether you feel it or not. Whether you feel disconnected, whether you feel like God isn't there, I want you to know he sees you. He has compassion for you. He's speaking to you, and he desires to heal you. Got to hold on. Got to hold on to that. Throughout this series, we've been looking at different aspects so we can love God and love each other with the healthiest version of us. We looked at our physical being, and then we looked at our mental, and we've been talking about our emotions, our feelings. And the encouragement has been to, in all of these areas, to assess, where are you now, and to address what you need to focus on. And so I want to give you 4 quick action steps when it comes to your emotions, it comes to your feelings, to help you navigate through. Because remember, just because you feel it doesn't mean you should act on it. And here's a path to help you navigate through your feelings. The first one is this. I just got to encourage you to pause. You got to pause. Just because you're feeling a certain way doesn't mean you should follow those feelings. There's something about literally stopping yourself. There's something about literally saying, hey, I know I'm feeling this way, but it's better for me to pause the movement of my life than just to follow my feelings. And once you pause, you need to admit, you got to admit what your feelings are, what you are actually feeling, and admit that there's layers of emotion to what you're feeling right now. It's just not one feeling. I mean, there's a whole list of feelings that are being integrated together, that are being entangled together. And all of those feelings help it to intensify and complicate actually what you are feeling. And the more you can admit to, hey, it's not just one thing I'm feeling multiple things, and all of them are coming together. The more you can own your feelings, then you move to the third step. You got to talk to someone. Because when you talk to someone that you trust, when you talk to someone that you respect, when you talk to someone that you just know will help walk with you on your spiritual journey, when you talk with someone who's willing to speak truth into your life, you're going to, well, as you talk about your feelings out loud, they're going to be able to help you untangle what you are feeling. They're going to help you, well, bring some clarity into that. And the last one, there's some healing that needs to be done. There's some feelings that are, well, months, years, decades in the making that you've never healed from. Until you heal from a childhood incident, from a teenage year incident, from a college moment of life to a first job issue, till you start healing from some things in your past. I'm just telling you, those feelings, those broken, fractured feelings are still wreaking havoc in you and through you. No, Jesus sees you. Sees you. You can't disguise your feelings from Jesus. He knows your heart. Know that Jesus, with his entire being, has compassion for you. Know that Jesus is speaking to you. He's speaking to you right now. And know that Jesus wants to bring healing to your life. Let me pray. Lord, I thank you for who you are, what you're doing. Lord, I pray for every single person that they'll face their feelings. It's uncomfortable, it's scary, it's filled with more feelings. But Lord, you've created us to feel. But you also want to bring healing to some feelings, to some emotions that are broken and fractured. Lord, thank you for seeing us. Thank you for having compassion for us. Thank you for speaking to us individually. And thank you for bringing healing into our life. In your name I pray. Amen.